Okay, good morning everyone. I've just started recording. Welcome to the second week of structural graph theory. Are there any questions or concerns pertaining to anything we covered in the last lecture? Right, so we talked about paths, trails, and walks. Right, some minor differences between them, subtle differences. And in particular, we talked about Eulerian or Euler trails and Euler tours, right? So an Euler trail is a trail where every edge is used. And by the definition of a trail, if it is used, it has to be used exactly once, right? So every edge is traversed exactly once. And an Euler tour is very similar. The only additional requirement is that it should be a closed trail. So you start and end at the same vertex. Okay. One good way to remember or to kind of appreciate it is for an Euler, if a graph is an Euler trail, then you can draw all the edges in a single, without lifting the pen and without ever repeating on the same point. Okay, this is if and only if. And for an Euler tool, it just means that you will start, your pencil will start at the same point and end at the same point. Okay. So I gave some DIY and TIY, try it yourself. Right? And let's draw a non-trivial example of a graph that has an Euler tool, right? So probably I've already drawn one. You can do something like this. And I can add one more edge like this. Okay, so we are dealing with graphs with multiple edges and loops, right? So here is a graph where you can actually find an Euler tool. So I'll leave it to you. Okay. And I actually gave away the answer to characterizing graphs that have Euler tools in one of the exercises. It is exactly those graphs in which every vertex has an even degree and the graph has to be connected, right? So here is a theorem that I assume most of you have seen in your previous course on graph theory. Due to Euler, a graph has an Euler tool if and only if one, each vertex has even degree, and two, the graph has to be connected. Right? Otherwise, clearly you will not have an Euler tool. Okay, so we won't be proving this theorem right now. We will actually prove slightly different result, which looks very similar, and actually they both are in a sense equivalent. And you might be deducing Euler's theorem from that result. Okay, so I want to now take a detour. I just wanted to give you a motivation. So one way to look at what we are going to start now is it gives an alternative way to look at Euler's theorem. Okay, and it will actually take us a bit deeper into the topic. Okay. All right. So maybe I'll start a new page. Are there any questions or concerns? Okay, let me just give this title for now. Okay. All right. So what we'll do is we'll take an example first of all, and we will associate a vector space with our graph. Okay. The intention is still to prove something very structural, but looking at it from a vector space point of view is going to give us an interesting insight into the underlying mathematics. Okay, so let's start with one example. So let's look at this graph here. Okay, I won't label the vertices, I'll just label the edges because we are going to be interested in edge sets of the graph. So let's call these E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, E6, E7, E8, 9, 10, and 11. Okay? And we will look at subgraphs of the graph, but we won't worry about which vertices are in our subgraph. We will look at spanning subgraphs. So what is a spanning subgraph? A subgraph H of a graph G is a spanning subgraph if the vertex sets are exactly the same. Okay? So for today's lecture, and in fact for the next few lectures, we will think of subgraphs as just being sets of edges, and we will consider all the vertices being there. Okay? We will view all right. So now we are looking at all the subsets of our edge set, and we can think of them as vectors. Okay, so we will look at all the subsets of the edge set, and we will think of each of them as a vector, as a 0, 1 vector. Okay, so let me give you one example. Let me pick some edges. Supposing I pick E1, E5, E10, E7, and E11. Okay, so this is a set of edges, the red colored set.
So, sir, in this context, any subgraph is a spanning subgraph, right?
Right. In this context, yeah, that's right. Okay, so let's see what are our edges. 1, 5, 7, 10, and 11. Okay, how do we associate a vector with this? Well, our vectors are going to be 0, 1 vectors. So I won't write a different notation. So I will use the same notation for the edge set and for the vector. Okay, we will use them interchangeably because introducing additional notation is not going to be very useful. So we will associate a vector with this, and our vectors will be labeled by the edges of the graph. So E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, E6, E7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Okay. And whenever the edge is in the set, we are going to put a 1 there, otherwise we are going to put a 0, right? Very standard construction of a 0, 1 vector. So we have 1, we have 5, we have 7, 10, and 11. And all the others are 0. Okay, so that's our set of edges, and it corresponds to a 0, 1 vector as shown. Good. And if you consider all the subsets of the edge set of the graph, then you can view it as a vector space. So let's define a vector space. E of G is the edge space of a graph. And of course, you will ask me, what's the operation of addition? It's simply symmetric difference. Very standard stuff in theoretical computer science, for instance. So it's a collection of all subsets of the edge set of a graph, and it is isomorphic in the algebraic sense, to GF2 in m dimensions, where m is the number of edges of the graph, right? So those of you who are not familiar with GF2 notation, GF2 is the same as the integers modulo 2. So the addition operation is simply symmetric difference. I'll give you an example. Addition is just symmetric difference. Okay, so here we have one set S, and let me take another set T. Let me color it in green. So supposing I take the set T, and let's pick some green edges for our example. So let's say I pick E5. Sorry, I did not use the right color. Let's say I pick E5, I pick E3, E4, E11, that's good enough, right? So we have E5, E4, E5, E3 and E11. Okay, you'll get a vector corresponding to this. So we have got ones in these positions and a one here, and the rest all are zeros. And now you may add the two vectors, S plus T, which just means you are taking the symmetric difference of the corresponding sets. Okay, 1 plus 1 is 0, 0 plus 0 is 0, otherwise you've got 1. Okay, so what is S plus T?
So, sir,
Yeah, go ahead.
if we view them as sets, then it is symmetric difference. Otherwise, if you view them as vectors, then what we are doing, we are basically doing bitwise XOR operation.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, it is a bitwise XOR operation, right? Okay, so S plus T is simply going to be, if you want to look at it in a diagrammatic way, you're taking all the edges that are green but not red, and all the edges that are red but not green. Okay, and that will be E3, E4, E7, and E10. You will not be taking, sorry, and I think I missed E1. Okay, you will not be taking E5 and E11 because they are red as well as green. Okay, so what's the answer? It's 1, 3, 4, 7, and 10. Okay, great. So any questions or concerns regarding what the edge space is?
So sir, when you're writing S plus T by plus, we mean the operation plus in the vector space.
Yes, yes, yes. So here I mean the symmetric difference of S and T. So maybe because we are also using plus for other things, yeah, it's going to be a bit context dependent, right? So when I add two graphs, I don't necessarily mean it this way. Let me use a different notation. Okay, let me use a plus with a circle around it. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions or concerns?
Addition means plus with the circle.
Yeah, yeah. So in this context, we will use plus with a circle around it so that we don't confuse with how we normally use plus and minus in graph theory, or at least how I normally use it. Okay?
Okay.
So can I ask?
Yeah.
Can you explain that edge space of a graph and isomorphic to GF2 power n? Can you tell that?
Well, it's basically, so the edge space of a graph, you see, the only thing you are doing, if you just take all 0, 1 vectors in m dimensions, right? So you have m coordinates in every vector, right? Then what you get is exactly this vector space, right? So all we are doing is for every coordinate, we are labeling it by a specific edge of the graph.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So for example, if your graph had 3 edges, so you can have 2 different graphs on 3 edges, right? But the edge space of both of them, it's really the same because it's basically all 0, 1 vectors with 3 entries, right? So it
Yes,
doesn't
sir.
depend on the graph. It only depends on the number of edges. The only thing
Okay.
that really matters is the number of edges, right? All we are doing is we are taking this particular space, GF2 to the M, and we are associating each component with a specific edge of the graph in consideration. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. But what is GF2? Like, should we know this before itself, or is it something new?
Well, GF2 is basically the integers modulo 2. So it's you might have seen a different notations, right? So rather than looking at all the integers, we are considering the integers modulo 2, which just means 0 and 1, right? So
Okay.
if you're not too familiar, I would just read on Wikipedia or somewhere about GF2, and it just gives you the basic information that is necessary for this course,
Hmm.
right? We are not going to need any, we are not going to require any deep concepts from this algebraic stuff. Okay, but I
Yes.
still want you to be able to follow it at least in a graph theoretic sense. So if you want to focus on the graph theory side of things, what you are doing is you are looking at all subsets of the edge set, and you are considering addition to be the symmetric difference operation. Okay, so if you're
Yes.
not too familiar with the vector side of things, it should be fine,
Hmm. Okay.
right? Okay, but if you want, you can just read a bit on Wikipedia, for instance. Alright. So in other words, for any two graphs with the same number of edges, the edge space is really the same. It's not different.
So basically, sir, it is an m-dimensional vector space over Z mod 2Z. Over
Right,
the field Z mod
exactly.
2Z.
Right.
Sir,
Yeah.
can you show the previous page now?
Yeah, here.
Yeah,
Sorry.
just
I
a
didn't-
second, sir. Just
Yeah. You mean the previous pages in the Eulerian circuit stuff?
no, this one only. This
Okay,
one only.
okay, sure.
Yeah, okay, sir. You can.
Okay. Also, by the way, in case anyone is taking notes, I hope you know that I'm making all of these notes available on Piazza. Right?
Yes,
So
sir.
the entire PDF is going to be available on Piazza at the end of the lecture. Just letting you know, in case someone is not aware of that. Okay? Good. So we have got the edge space of a graph. So far, the edge space, as we said, it doesn't tell you anything about the structure. Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, will you upload exactly these notes? in
Yeah, I
Piazza?
upload exactly these notes. Yeah.
And also the recording of the video.
Yeah, both.
Okay.
Right, it's all on Piazza, so please keep checking Piazza. There is a resources page where you will see the lecture notes as well as the video recordings link. The link is to YouTube. Okay, great. So at this point we have just defined the sub edge space of a graph, which doesn't tell you anything about the structure of that particular graph. It just tells you the number of edges in that graph, right? Okay, but now we are going to do some more interesting stuff on this edge space. Now that we have a vector space, we are going to consider some interesting subspaces of this vector space, and they will tell us something about the structure of the graph. Okay, so our goal is to define a subspace of the edge space of a graph that will help us in proving Euler's theorem. Again, we may not prove Euler's theorem in the lectures, it might be on your assignment or something, but we'll prove something that will help you to prove Euler's theorem. Okay? Good. All right, so how do we go about defining this subspace?
Sir, by Euler's theorem, did you mean exactly the same version which you mentioned?
Yeah, we will prove Euler's theorem, but in the lectures we might prove a related result called Veblen's theorem, and you might have to deduce Euler's theorem from Veblen's theorem in your assignment. I might give you some
Sir,
steps
also,
for it.
so that edge space of the graph doesn't depend on the structure of the graph. It depends only on the number of edges. So sir, this subspace which you are going to define now, sir, will it depend on the structure of the graph?
Yes. Right. So the subspaces we will define, they will be dependent on the particular graph under consideration.
So it will vary from graph to graph under consideration.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So let's go back to our previous page for a quick second. Right. So what is Euler's theorem telling us? It's saying that the graph is connected and each vertex has even degree. So let's forget the connected part right now. It's not easy from an algebraic point of view, at least what we are going to look at. Connectivity is not going to be that easy to understand. Let's focus on the first condition, which is actually the more important condition. Each vertex has even degree. Okay? So let us consider all the subgraphs of a graph in which each vertex has even degree. Okay, so let's define this. A subgraph H of a graph G is an even subgraph if each vertex has even degree with respect to the graph H, right? We are not looking at the degrees in G, we are looking at the degrees in H. Okay, so let's take a quick example. Let's go back to our previous example, which is this guy. So for instance, and as we noted earlier, we are going to think of subgraphs as sets of edges in this particular part of the course, right? We are not going to worry about the vertex set. So consider the subgraph in red color. Let's say I add this here, okay? And let's say okay. So if you just look at this subgraph, okay, this is an even subgraph. Alternatively, you could have made it connected as well if you like. This is also an even subgraph. If you look at just the red colored edges, then every vertex is incident with an even number of red colored edges. Okay. We are also going to allow loops. So if you have a loop, for example, then you can also pick that loop, because what we are looking at is the degree. And remember, when we look at the degree of a vertex, the loops are counted twice. Okay. So here is an example of an even subgraph of the given graph G, and the red colored subgraph is H. Any questions or concerns about what is an even subgraph? All right, so why are we looking at the even subgraphs of the graph? Well, there is a reason for that. We noted our goal was to define a subspace of the edge space.
Sir,
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
leftmost vertex in the graph
Yeah.
on the path, it has 3 neighbors, right?
Are you looking at the black colored edges or the red colored edges?
Uh, so do we? Okay, the edge. Okay, sorry, sir.
Right? Yeah, good. So it has odd degree. There are several vertices in this graph that have odd degree, but this red colored subgraph, that has even degree for each vertex. Okay? So the graph G may not be even, but we are saying that the subgraph H is even if every vertex in H has even degree. Okay? So, why are we defining this? Well, because something really cool happens. This turns out to be a subspace of the edge space. And we will prove that. So, it turns out that even subgraphs of a graph G, of any graph G, form a subspace of the edge space of that graph. Okay? So let's see how we would prove this. Okay, we want to prove this statement. So let me give it what does it mean? What does it mean to prove this statement? Can anybody tell me what are the important ingredients we need to show that a particular set of vectors is a subspace of the given space?
Sir, I think we can prove this by parity argument.
Okay, but sure. But before that, can someone tell me what are the main ingredients to show that a certain set of vectors is a subspace?
They should follow the closure property.
Closure property. Okay, good. Any other property?
It should be closed under scalar multiplication as well as addition of vectors.
Right, right. Closure under scalar multiplication and addition. Okay. Any other properties we need to check?
The zero vector must be there in the subspace.
Zero vector must be there. Must contain the zero vector. Okay. So let's look at the second property first. So what is the zero vector in our context? What does a zero vector mean in our context?
Empty graph.
It's the empty graph. And if you consider the empty graph, what is the degree of each vertex?
0.
0. Exactly. Which is an even number. So no problem, right? Our definition is okay. Right? It fits the property that the empty graph, in other words, the zero vector, is in our vector space or is in our set. So this one is a tick mark because empty graph is an even graph, even subgraph. Okay.
Sir, actually, do you not get that it contains the zero vector from the first property itself?
Yeah.
It does come for free, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it does come for free, but I just feel that it's better to address it explicitly so that we don't miss the trivial case.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah.
I have one doubt in the graph, sir. Like in the top left graph, there are 4 vertices, no, sir. The middle vertex in the base of the triangle, it is having only 3.
That's right. That's right.
So
So you're looking at these vertices, these 4?
yeah, sir.
Okay, so that's what we addressed earlier. Notice that the graph G, I'm not claiming that the graph is even. The graph G is not an even graph in our example. But the red colored subgraph is an even subgraph. So we are looking at the degrees of the vertices with respect to the red colored edges. We are not looking at all the edges that are given to us.
Okay, sir. So it is just a square.
So this is absolutely crucial. We are looking at the degrees in the graph, in the subgraph H.
Yeah, sir.
Okay?
Understood.
We don't want to restrict ourselves to just even graphs. We want to look at all graphs in the world, but we are going to consider even subgraphs of those graphs because they form a vector space which is of interest to us and was essentially of interest to Euler back in 1700. Although he did not view it in terms of vector space.
G may not be an even graph, but we are considering
Exactly.
all even subgraphs.
Exactly. G need not be even. So it's good to clarify these points right now. Okay? Good. So now let's go to closure. Yeah, go ahead.
U and V are in H, then the edge between U and V need not necessarily be not in the
Right.
subgraph, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So in this graph,
Mhm.
look at the leftmost vertex and its neighbor.
Okay.
I think the middle one is not.
So you want me to
Okay.
label the vertices?
I think he's confused between induced subgraphs and
Right,
subgraph.
right. Sorry. So what are you saying again? So let's look at the leftmost vertex,
Yeah,
vertex
the
1.
vertices 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Can you show me which edges are we looking at?
We are looking at the red colored edges. So 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 0, 3, 3, 4, 3, 5, 4, 5, and the loop at 5. Those are our red colored edges.
Okay. So for the vertex 2,
Yeah.
uh, its degrees 0, 2, 1, 2, and 3, 2.
No, 0, 2 is not in our red set.
Oh, okay.
Right. So the red colored set, in case the colors are not clear, I'll just
Oh,
write down the
I
red
see,
colored
I see,
set.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's confused that the graph is induced. Subgraph
Right.
is induced.
That is another concept. So there is a concept called induced subgraphs that we'll talk about later, where if you take the vertices, then you have to take all the edges between those vertices. But right now we are not considering induced subgraphs.
Actually, sir, if we consider both spanning and induced, then it basically means H equal to G.
Yeah, that's right. So right now we are just considering spanning subgraphs. Okay. I hope I didn't miss any edges. 3, 4, 4, 5, 5. Yeah. Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
so basically, whatever ages we are considering, according to that, we are checking if the vertex has even degree, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Right. So we are just considering the red colored edges in our example.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Any other questions or concerns? Okay. If not,
So,
yeah, go ahead.
so in this graph, like I'm confused about like two, for example, the vertex two, right?
Yeah.
So, so vertex two has actually connections to 2, 1, 2, 3, and 2, 0, right? The
And 2,
series.
5. In the graph, there is also 2, 5.
Okay, 2, 5 is also part of the graph.
In the black graph, 2, 5 is there. But in the red graph, we are only taking two edges, 2, 1 and 2, 3.
Okay, 2, 0 is not being taken.
Right. It's not being taken. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So what I've done is I've just colored the edges that are taken in red color. Those edges that are not red, they are not in our H. Okay. Good. Any other questions or concerns? Okay. So now let's go to closure. What does it mean to establish closure in this context? Can anyone tell me how do we show that this particular set of vectors, which correspond to the even subgraphs of the given graph, how do we show that they satisfy the closure property? I want a graph theoretic interpretation of this, or a set theoretic interpretation of this.
Sir, I think so. If we take two even subgraphs, say H and T,
Mhm.
say H and T, they are both even subgraphs. So I have to show that H plus T is also an even subgraph.
Exactly. That's
So
right.
in order, so in
That's
order
right.
to show that H plus T is an even subgraph, we have to show that degree of every vertex V in H plus T is even.
Yes. Okay. So let's pause here. Let's pause here. Let me get everybody to the same page. So what we are going to prove, and I want everybody to be convinced before we move on. So I will write down the numbers in Bondi Murti for your reference, but my approach to proving things is not always the same. So I use a different flow. So here I'm going to call this a proposition. We will prove that the symmetric difference, remember symmetric difference is our addition operation, of any two even subgraphs of a graph G is another even subgraph. Okay, so we will prove this statement, but before we prove this, I want to convince everybody that this is all we need for this to be a vector space. This is basically the closure property. Because scalar multiplication is basically trivial in this case. You either take the vector or you don't take the vector. Either you multiply it by 0 or you multiply it by 1. Okay? So scalar multiplication is really trivial. Either you get the 0 vector or you get the vector itself. So the only thing we really need to worry about is addition. And addition is basically symmetric difference in the graph theoretic sense. Okay? So is everybody convinced that proposition 2.16, this proposition implies that the even subgraphs constitute a vector space of the edge space, a subspace of the edge space. Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, so symmetric difference, if we take the geometrical terms, so so is it like if you take s plus t, then is it means you are removing the edges in s which is being shared with t?
Right, exactly. So it's like it's taking the union minus the intersection.
Okay.
Right? So it's a union of the, if you go back to our example, it's a union of the red and green edges minus the intersection of the red and green edges. Does it answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So before we prove it, I just want everybody to be convinced that proving this is enough to conclude that the even subgraphs form a subspace of the X space. Okay? Are there any questions or concerns regarding this implication? Okay. If not, let's prove it. Okay? So I'll give the general proof to you as an exercise, but I will prove it for loopless graphs. Assume that G is loopless. Okay? So let's not worry about loops for the time being. That will be a good exercise for you. Okay? So what does it mean to show that the symmetric difference of two even subgraphs is another even subgraph? So let's say we take two even subgraphs, H1 and H2. Two even subgraphs of a graph G.
So parting the graph as loops.
Right, so that's an exercise. Okay?
Exercise, okay. So we have to do it separately.
No, I just want you to first see the proof of this and see how you can generalize it to graphs with loops. But you can also deal with loops separately if you like.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay. So because our graph is loopless, let me introduce a term which I may not have introduced before, and it's used in Bondi-Murthy, so it's good to know. So what is a link? A link is an edge that is not a loop. Right? So in our graph, of course, all edges are links. Okay. So in our example before, all the edges are links except this one. This is a loop. Okay, so how do we prove this statement? That the symmetric difference of H1 and H2 is an even subgraph. Anyone? How would we prove this statement? We have two subgraphs. Let's go to our example. We have a red colored subgraph and a green colored subgraph. They are both even subgraphs. That is not true in this example, but that's not the point. Okay. We have these two even subgraphs, and we want to show that their symmetric difference is another even subgraph. So how do we show this?
You can look at a vertex.
Okay, let's look at one vertex.
Yeah.
Consider any vertex V. Okay, now what should we do?
It will have some even number of green edges and an even number of red edges.
Great.
And they might or may not overlap, but we do have.
Okay, let's make an example. We have some red edges. I can draw them consecutively. Why not? It makes it easier. Right? The drawing is just a representation. And we have some green edges. There has to be an even number of red edges. So 3 is not an even number. So let's make one more. And let's make some number of green edges. Maybe I'll make 4 green edges. Okay, so we have even number of red and even number of green edges. Now what do we do?
We'll exactly be removing the ones which have both green and a red edge on them.
Okay, okay, good.
And so the ones we're removing will be in pairs, like.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Right.
what.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
the total green plus red is even, since green and red are even numbers.
Yeah.
So removing pairs should give us an even number.
Exactly, exactly. Another way to visualize this using Venn diagrams, if you like, is you make this. Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, if we think in terms of adjacency matrices, then we are just XORing them together.
Right, that is true.
And XOR of two vectors which have some even is also even. Is also
Right, right. So
That's
you
what
can use a fact from algebra that you're familiar with, or you can just prove it again using elementary stuff, right? So let's look at the graph theoretic viewpoint, because not everybody is as familiar with the algebraic viewpoint here, I suppose. So the set theoretic viewpoint, if you like, is you look at the red color. Yeah, go ahead.
So the red intersection green can be either even or odd.
Exactly, exactly.
So based on that argument, we can proceed, because then
Right.
what we want to do, we want to do a red minus red intersection green union green minus red intersection green.
Exactly.
Now
Exactly.
we know that both red and green are of even cardinality. So whatever the cardinality of the intersection, even or odd, the symmetric difference must be even.
Right, right. You're right. So what this drawing, and exactly the argument you mentioned, what this drawing is representing is all the edges incident at V. Remember, this is the set of all edges, all links incident with the vertex V. Okay, that's the notation we are using. So if you look at all the edges incident at the vertex V, some of them are red, some of them are green, some of them are red and green, and some of them are neither red nor green. Okay? Well, this intersection here could be odd or even. So let's look at one case. If this is even, then you will have an even number here because the total is even. And here you will have even as well. So the symmetric difference is even plus even, which is even. Okay? The other case is, this is odd. Well, if this is odd, then you will have an odd number here because the total is even, and you will have an odd number here for the same reason. And now again, odd plus odd is even. Does that make sense? So there are two cases. Either the red intersection green is odd or the red intersection green is even. But in both cases, you will get that red union green is even. Someone's mic seems to be on. Please turn it off.
Then sir, basically you can say that the symmetric difference of two odd subgraph may not be odd by this argument.
Right, that's right. The same argument does not work for odd subgraphs. There is something special about even subgraphs which makes it all work. Also, if you look at odd subgraphs, the empty vector is not even there. So, well, it's not going to be a subspace, right? So you look at two cases, odd and even, and in both cases, you prove that the red union green is always even. Sorry, not union, symmetric difference. My bad. Okay. Are there any questions or concerns about this proof? Right. So notice that I did not write down everything like you would write in a proof, which is what I did in the last time. But basically, all the ingredients are here. We are looking at a vertex. We are defining the red and green sets based on H1 and H2. And we are proving that the symmetric difference, if you look at this particular vertex, is even, which means at every vertex, you will have an even number of red symmetric difference green edges. Since this holds for an arbitrary vertex V, it holds for each vertex. This means that H1 symmetric difference H2 is an even subgraph of G. That completes the proof. Maybe I should add one more line here. All of this argument here is for the vertex V, right? And this implies that the degree of V is even in H1 symmetric difference H2, red symmetric difference green. Okay. Are there any questions or concerns regarding everything we have proved so far?
Sir, I think if the graph has loops, then it will not matter, because how
Right.
many loops will be there in H1 intersection H2?
Right. So let's not discuss that further. Let's leave it to everybody as an exercise. Okay. You're right. Loops don't really matter. Okay. But I want everybody to think about that after the lecture. So what do loops do to the problem? Any other questions or concerns? Okay. If not, okay, how much time do we have? We are at 12:50 already. Okay, great. I'll just take 2 more minutes and we will end the lecture there. So these subgraphs, the even subgraphs, they form a cycle. They form a subspace of the edge space. Let's give this subspace a name, and that is related to the following. So what are the simplest even subgraphs? Can somebody tell me what are the simplest quote unquote even subgraphs? Cycles. So of course there is the empty subgraph, but then there are the cycles, right? And this subspace that we just discussed is called the cycle space of the graph, because it can be generated by all the cycles of the graph, right? Here we are talking about generated in the algebraic sense. So you can take the cycles and take their symmetric difference to form all the even subgraphs of your graph. Okay, so it turns out.
Sir, I have a just slight question.
Yeah.
So empty graph is also an even subgraph. So how can we generate it using cycles?
The cycle symmetric difference itself.
Okay, so
Right.
I will take a cycle. Okay.
Exactly. Right. So the zero vector can always be generated by taking the symmetric difference of the same element with itself in this context. It
So,
turns out
I
that
will
the
take any
cycle.
cycle.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I will take basically any cycle C, and C symmetric difference C will give me the empty graph.
Exactly. It turns out that the cycles generate the cycle space of the graph, which is basically, I'm defining it, it's the set of all even subgraphs of G. And this is why this is called the cycle space of a graph. Okay. We haven't proved this. We are going to prove this next. Okay. So this is our goal. Next goal is to prove this. What is this here? This is okay. So this is what we will be doing tomorrow. This is where we will start, not tomorrow, on Wednesday. And then we will be seeing some other interesting things about vector spaces associated with a graph. Are there any questions or concerns?
Sir, what is this notation called? That cycle space?
Right. So it's script CG. So in LaTeX, this is, I think, MathCal capital C. But, right. So this is script C of G. And this is the cycle space of the graph. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll just call it the cycle space of the graph. I won't read out the notation generally. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So, is the basis of this vector space all the induced cycles?
Maybe. It's a good question. So you are saying that all the induced cycles they might form a basis of this cycle space.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I am just asking. Means because
Right.
what we can show basically we can show that if we take any cycle C, then that if that cycle C is a chordless cycle, if it doesn't have a chord, then it itself.
Yeah, I think he's right, sir.
Yeah. So I think they generate the cycle space. Is it a basis? I will have to check. I'll have to think more about it.
If we just can show that the induced cycles they are linearly independent vectors, then they will be basis.
That's right. So they do generate the cycle space. I am not too sure if they form a basis. That I will have to check again, or I'll have to try to prove it.
Yeah,
Again.
they generate the cycle space, but I am also not sure whether that
Okay.
will be or not.
Okay, well, who knows? Might be on one of your assignments. Yes, go ahead.
Sir, what do you mean by basis here?
Well, we mean basis by the algebraic sense. So for a vector space, a basis is a minimal set of vectors that generates all the vectors in that vector space. Right? For example, if you look at this particular graph, maybe not this graph, this graph is fine. If you look at this particular graph here, you want to generate the cycle space. What are the elements of the cycle space? You have got the empty set, you have got this triangle C1, you have got this triangle C2, and then you have the outer cycle, which is in red color, C. Okay, so you've got empty, C1, C2, and C. And in this example, I think you can show that C1 and C2, they form a basis because you can generate all the four vectors using C1 and C2. Right, so what is a basis? It should generate all the vectors using the symmetric difference operation. And at the same time, it should be a minimal set. So you should not require, there should not be any vectors which are redundant in it. Okay, so I would suggest that you read about basis of a vector space. That should be good. Does it answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Any other questions or concerns?
I think this was also the same thing that I was asking on the Piazza model.
Okay.
I think if you like iteratively remove the shorter cycles, you get this immediately. Or you can also see from Veblen's theorem that this must be true. Or I see that the induced cycles must be a form of basis of C.
Right. So basis, yeah. Is it?
I have not seen Veblen's theorem separately, but I have seen like basically how to construct Euler tools.
Hmm.
And
I see.
from that I see that I think that this must be true. From that it seems obvious to me that this must be true.
I see.
But I have not seen. I was not aware of Veblen's theorem. I mean, I'm not aware of the name Veblen.
Well, so let me see if I can contradict this. So that means if you take a complete graph, in a complete graph you will have lots of triangles, right? And they will all be induced cycles, right?
Yes.
So I don't think you need that many cycles to generate the cycle space. I have a feeling that they generate the cycle space, but they may not be a basis. But again, I'll have to check this.
Yes, sir, you are right, because
So-
number of induced triangles is n choose 3, while
Right.
the number of edges is n choose 2.
Right, exactly.
And if
Number-
if it is a subspace, then the number of basis elements must be less than equal to the number of edges.
Right, exactly. That's right.
And here
Right.
n choose 3 is greater than n choose 2.
Yeah, so you don't need all the induced cycles. You need a subset of the induced cycles, and that should be enough to generate the cycle space. Again, it depends. Yeah, go ahead.
Here,
No, like
in the graph you given
basis,
here,
see, all the elements in the basis must belong to the span tree. So I don't see like it's obvious that you can construct with a lesser number of. I mean, it may not be true for all graphs, but there are graphs for which the basis of the at least for Euler graphs which have Euler tools, I think this must be complete.
Okay. Well, these are interesting questions. So let's keep thinking about it, right? So maybe try to make some examples and see if you can either find a counter example and prove that it is a counter example, right? Or otherwise prove the statement that the induced cycles actually constitute a basis. Okay, so this is a try it yourself. I will distinguish between do it yourself and try it yourself, because a try it yourself might also appear on one of your assignments. Do the induced cycles, and there might be people here who don't know what the induced cycle is. So I will define it in my post on Piazza. Do the induced cycles comprise a basis of the cycle space of the graph? And I will put a definition of this on Piazza. Okay? And before we go ahead, let me stop recording because I don't want the lecture to become too long.